I mean, it is Monday, May 18th, 6:30, Kearney Board of Aldermen meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Shirley, could you take roll?
I have taken roll call. Everybody is present and you have a quorum.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Dan, are you not able to be seen?
No, we have video now, and I can see him now. We're good.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I see him.
Very good. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Board will move to the consent agenda. We have the previous meeting minutes and the warrant bills presented for payment. If there is no questions or discussion, we entertain a motion to pass a consent agenda.
I make a motion to pass consent agenda as written.
I second it.
All right, Jim, if you could take roll, please.
Alderman.
Aye.
Alderman Holt.
Aye.
Alderman Steiner. Alderman Steiner. Alderman Steiner.
Aye.
Okay, your voice is getting weak. And then Alderman Barger.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, under mayor's remarks, the only thing I have tonight is I do want to provide an update and discuss a little bit COVID-19 update that I've been giving every meeting. I just urge our residents to still utilize the Clay County Public Health Center website and the dashboard. That information is updated every weekday. It includes information of cases by city, age, race, sex, and other good information about testing sites. As of last Thursday, there were 9 confirmed cases in the city of Kearney. So it's definitely here and growing from a few weeks ago of only 3 confirmed cases inside the city limits of Kearney. I urge all citizens to continue to practice social distancing and wear a mask when out in public. For us, for Kearney to truly be a leader and be informed. So feel free to utilize the Clay County Public Health Center for information and point other people in that direction so we can help continue to educate our community. Other thing I have for mayor's remarks is before we do open up the public hearings this evening, we will discuss kind of the process and how we expect to handle the public hearing electronically. So rest assured, before we start that, we'll give instructions on how we're going to move forward with that. With that, that concludes my mayor's remarks, and we'll move to the administrator's report. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Consistent with the Clay County Recovery Plan, we believe it is responsible to cancel the Kearney Amphitheater event schedule the entire season. We also are recommending canceling the July 3rd fireworks display. We'd ask the board's approval of this action as we need to notify our fireworks vendor and need to be confirming this action with our partners, the Kearney Lions Club and the Knights of Columbus. Also, due to this cancellation, our NKC beverage corporate sponsorship cannot be expected, which will be a $12,000 revenue loss. I want to point out that we are in step 1 of the phase 2 recovery plan of Clay County, which currently prohibits groups larger than 25 congregating. If we moved through to step 4, that would still limit groups of no larger than 250. As you know, when we have our event at our amphitheater, we have live music and we have a community air toys playground area. And there's just no possible way that event can be conducted. And therefore, I'd ask the board's support in sanctioning that recommendation.
Jim, is that also the Rose Fest?
That is a private event, and I believe that they have not made their decision, but we're sharing our guidance with them on Clay County. And that's in August, I think. So it's a little further out.
Yeah, I believe that board is meeting this evening as well. Alderman Holton going to be making a decision relatively soon. Any questions or discussion from the board?
No.
If no questions or discussion, Mr. Administrator, were you hoping to entertain a motion for approval on that?
A motion is fine. Unanimous consent is fine if there's no objections. It would be nice to have a motion for the record, though.
All right, board, do we entertain a motion to cancel the July 3rd fireworks event and all amphitheater events for this year?
My heart is breaking. I think this is very hard. And at a time like this, patriotism is so important. Being third, all of that. But I also very much understand the health and welfare of all of our community. And I would hate to put even one person at jeopardy. So as much as I hate to say it, I will make the motion to cancel all of our events at the amphitheater. Makes me a little misty-eyed to do this, but yes, I will do this.
Or we have a first on the table. Do we have a second?
I second it. And again, I concur with Jerry. It's hard.
All right, Mr. Administrator, take roll, please.
Alderman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Holt,
Begrudgingly, aye.
Alderman Steiner,
Aye.
Alderman Barger.
I join the group in sadly saying aye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The vote is unanimous.
Okay, please continue with your report.
That actually concludes my report, Mr. Mayor. As I was closing, I will be bringing up probably at the next meeting a more evaluation of revenue losses and some that are coming to light that we need to deal with. But I'm stopping there with the NKC beverage sponsorship will not be a revenue that we can count on.
You had on your agenda under your report, sewer plant headworks information. Are you going to
Oh, I'm
over
sorry.
that?
That's right. We have paid down the, with the tonight's approval of the bills, we are paying down the retainage down to 5%. We have the sewer plant headworks is fully operational. We are removing lots of grit and inorganic materials that end up in the basins and end up jamming in our pumps and causing all kinds of problems throughout. And so,
All right, thanks. No,
okay, there we go. Thank you.
All right,
Ryan?
does that conclude a report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to public requests and petitions. That has been withdrawn this evening. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, Mr. Mayor. We have talked to Bill Shull, advised him that we were going to make a recommendation on our fireworks event due to the Clay County Health Center rulings on mass congregations, and he has agreed to withdraw, but he wants to reserve his right to come back and ask you guys, possibly in June, if more optimistic news comes out of the Clay County Health Center.
Well, I hope that's the case, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes, and hopefully that is soon. We'll move on next to public hearings. We have 2 public hearings scheduled for this evening. First of all, thank staff and everybody that's on this tonight and our board to continue to meet electronically via Zoom. I know it's not the same as meeting face to face at City Hall, but nonetheless, I do believe that we must continue to move forward and not delay business when we have means like Zoom to conduct our business. Just like a normal public hearing, I hope that anybody that wants to speak and share their opinion, that's your right. And as elected officials, it's our job to listen to everybody. So you can, Ryan Marcotte on our staff is going to help me facilitate this process and make sure that we get to everybody and that everybody has the opportunity to speak. So if you'd like to speak when it becomes time and when I open the floor, you can just click on your raise hand, and then he'll push them as we need to. Or if you're calling by phone, because you do not have to have a computer to join the meeting, you can press *9 and it'll also notify Ryan as well. Jim or Ryan, is there anything else that we need to communicate for kind of the process to raise your hand to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I think you've pretty well covered it, and I think we can get to more instruction as we run into trouble.
Great. So before we move forward with our first item under public hearings and request, I do just want to let the 54 participants know that on our meeting is we have, as your elected officials and city staff, received dozens of letters, calls, and emails. So we have read all that information. It is part of the record. I just asked to please limit the repetitive comments, and so we can make sure we have plenty of time for everybody to voice their opinion tonight. With that being said, Mr. Administrator, if we can move forward with 6A, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. A public hearing has been scheduled to consider an application from Mike Yates and Andy Mackey seeking an amendment to their P multifamily zoned area designated at Tract A in Greenfield, modifying several stipulations of the original development agreement governing the development of multifamily housing. And in the agenda packet is a staff report explaining their request with staff recommendations, and David Pavlich may wish to give a verbal summarization. And then David, would you go ahead and introduce Mike Yates or Andy Mackey, or are those, I understand that they wanted to make a presentation.
Yeah, if we could, if staff has any comments, David, if you have anything to add, now's the time to do so. If not, if you could introduce the applicant, please.
Well, I wouldn't mind just stating what the application is. I think everybody knows, but it's good at least for the record to call out what's being proposed. Back in 2002, Tom Kretzinger, the former developer, proposed a multifamily project on this property. It's about 11 acres on the east side of the railroad tracks, south side of 19th Street, for some threeplex buildings, owner occupied. That was the plan. It's been vacant since that time. We do have new property owners. Mike Yates and Andy Mackey have been authorized by that owner to go through a rezoning hearing, and they do propose some changes to that plan, including modifying those buildings from threeplexes to fourplexes. There will be 14 of them, so there are a few fewer units. 56 units are proposed. There is one single family lot located at the southwest corner of the property along existing greenfield lots. If I think the board's aware, maybe on page 40 of your packet, there is reference to the Tom Kretzinger agreement that was put in place that kind of spelled out what the development might be like. I have highlighted in some red text for you what the new applicants propose to do as far as changes to that old development agreement. One of those being that rather than build some road improvements, they would do, we'd come up with an escrow amount that the city could then use and hold on to when we do some future 19th Street improvements. Again, a change in the type of buildings from threeplexes to fourplexes. There was a minimum square footage that was required. Their minimum square footage meets that, so there's no change proposed in that section. Section 4 talks about owner-occupied units. They would like the option of having some rental units, either owner-occupied or rental. And then two other parts of that agreement where there were no changes. Mike Yates and Alan Mackey, I think, are both on the line today, and they do have a presentation that they'd like to be able to maybe take over and run on the screen for everybody.
All right, David, I'll trust that if I don't sound okay, you'll tell me. I'm going to jump in here and try to share my screen, okay?
Yep.
First of all, hello, everybody. Thanks for jumping on. Try to share my screen here. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I think it's appropriate. I'm going to let Mike jump in here and get into the specifics. Back in February, Mike and I were in front of Planning and Zoning and had a 6-0 vote in our favor for this proposal. And then we've left, and obviously COVID hit, and we've really had a lot of opportunity to watch the kind of the rumor mill circle. And we wanted to kind of outlay some of the top myths out there, kind of at the head of this presentation, just so everybody on the call knows and the aldermen know what this is and what this isn't. We, as the mayor mentioned, has the emails and the letters. We've read those as well, and we take them serious. So in some of those letters and in some of the petitions that we've seen and the communication from the petitioners to the community, we want to kind of roll back some of the untruths we've heard and make sure everybody knows, what we're doing and get off on a level foot. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is we've heard in great detail that these developers and builders want to build and sell once these are rented to less scrupulous investors. We've seen that online, and I've actually taken calls on that. I want to be very clear, that's not what's happening here. We're going to build, own, and maintain these units in a pristine fashion. The last time we built, developed, and sold a fourplex for sale was 2016. So I think there was probably some truth to what some of the petitioners were saying, but you could see it's not very well founded. Again, the last time we had built and sold a fourplex to individuals was 2016. The second item I want to talk about in some of the emails to the aldermen and to the city were a Serrano Townhomes review. So Mike and I have on numerous occasions taken over failed developments that came out of 2008 and beyond. Serrano was one of those off of North Oak, and it had already had over 250 units in it that were kind of run down and dilapidated. And we built 48 brand new townhomes, and the petitioner took some of the reviews and took some of the pictures of units that were not from us. While it's possible that some of the things that were said online were about Serrano, it's probably very unlikely because those units were renting for $1,800 and $2,000 a unit. But I do know, and I would like to comfortably state as a matter of fact, the pictures that the petitioner put online were fake. They weren't fake, they were from older product. And that's very important that everybody understands that. I've heard this consistently, and I wanted to address it. And hopefully during the public comment, there'll be kind of an open dialogue on this topic, that rentals lower values. And that's something that we've often scratched our head on. We've not seen anywhere. And I think the basis for a lot of those comments are the rentals in Kearney aren't maybe like some of the rentals you'll see in Kansas City, Overland Park, Eagle Creek, Benson Place, et cetera. I mean, even Mike Yates, my business partner on the call, is putting a 400 home community in just south of Shoal Creek. It's called Davidson Farms, and he's building 500 to $1.2 million homes. And Mike's putting 50 townhomes at the entrance to his community because it's a growth driver for the community. Teachers, police officers, coaches, people that are building a custom home, they park there for a year and then they make a transition. Not only that, the millennials, that's how they want to live, is they don't want to mow their own grass. So we've seen this again and again and again. I mean, even down here, just in Liberty, you've got Benson Place that feeds into one of the top ranked elementaries in the entire state of Missouri, which is Shoal Creek Elementary. So we don't know where rentals lower values. We've not seen it. It's been healthy all over here. But I think the basis may be some of the apartments and duplexes and single family homes in Kearney are the reference point. And it's very, very important that everybody understands. And we can say this very confidently, and I hope it doesn't come across very unprofessional, but this will be the nicest townhome product or rental anywhere in Kearney. We are very, very, very confident of that. we talk about cheap rentals. We've heard that a lot in some of the communication, the cheap rentals. Most of the people, and we'll get into this a little bit further in an analysis in the presentation, most of the rentals will be $1,450 to $2,000 a month. Those types of units will have some of them finished basement, some of them 4-bedroom, and there's nothing cheap about $1,450 to $2,000. Those are high wage earners, people that work from home, people that are kind of, aging in place, looking for a villa type product. Most of the people that will live there can't afford a home. And that was one of the biggest decision makers for the developer of Greenfield in selling the land to us. He looks at this like this is an accelerator for the community, not just Greenfield, but all of Kearney, where people can go try something nice and then maybe buy a house in Kearney. And currently we've been told that that doesn't exist. So aesthetics and communicating with the city, they were pretty stringent on what they're going to ask us to do relative to our exteriors. One example of that is the stone wainscot on the sides of our buildings. You don't see that on any of the residential buildings at Greenfield. Our extensive landscape buffers at the request of the city, very much improved over the current plan that was in place. And thanks to the city for thinking through that. And we were happy to do that as well. So I'm going to move on to Mike here, and we'll go to the first step in the presentation. And if you guys could, David, could you just let me know and get confirmation that you're going to hear this pretty well? Here we go.
Thank you, Mayor Pogue and the Board of Aldermen. We appreciate your time and consideration for the Greenfield Townhomes project. My name's Mike Yates, and my business partner is Andy Mackey. We're both local residents of the Liberty area. We together own the Real Estate Store, which is a small brokerage focused on residential and commercial sales and investment sales as well. Some of the most recent projects that we've done that pertain or are similar to Greenfield are Davidson Farms at Shoal Creek. This is a 420 home community, which will have 52 rental townhomes at the front. Brighton Crossing Apartments, Tuscany Hill Townhomes, Serrano Townhomes, Sunset Plaza Townhomes, 95 Baltimore Townhomes, and we've even noted the Meadows of Searcy Creek, which is a villa community. So a lot of our experience that we want to call attention to right now pertain to similar communities that have both for sale and rental properties. We'd like to take just a moment to reflect on the current zoning and concept design of Parcel A. Its zone is RP3. The approved density is 60 triplex townhome units. A few things to note on this are the footprints. As you look at this graphic, you'll note that there are 2 cul-de-sacs drawn into this, which were eliminated by the current zoning and asked to be removed. A big part of that was just the grade of the property and the access, and you can see the challenge that you would have by getting 9 to 10 units all accessing in a cul-de-sac, so that just wasn't going to work. In addition, the design of the property or the design of the product itself is just outdated. It was never developed for a reason. It was never really planned to be a marketable product, or at least it was conceived to be that way, but just never came to fruition. So it needs to be updated. As a result of this property has been sitting there for 20 years in zones for townhouses that nobody has bitten it off to develop it, surely because of the design. We also want to call your attention to the exposure of the back of the units to the adjoining roads, both south and to the east. The red dots really represent the closest proximity to
going to find out anymore about that.
Of a building, similar to homes in the area. The backside architecture just. This represents the proposed zoning for Greenfield townhomes. And we kept it pretty simple in this graphic. We'd like to call your attention that the zoning will not change. It will stay as RP3. However, the product type will be changed. It's going to go from a dated property that apparently time has shown nobody was interested in building and the market didn't demand for it. So we are going to put in fourplex product, which we have been very successful in developing in other communities. These will have a 2-car garage design. They'll have high-end interior finishes and a low-maintenance exterior. We are going to be incorporating landscaping buffers between adjacent properties and in the center common area to create privacy. These are planned to meet for a high-end rental property in Kearney, which just simply doesn't exist. I'd like to also call your attention to the density. We've reduced the density from 60 townhome units to 56 townhome units, and that's attractive for lots of purposes. The setbacks on this property will be 30 feet back from the road with a 12-foot minimum between buildings. In this artistic rendering of our proposed layout, we'd like to have you note that all of this yellow area that's not contained within the roads or the driveways or the units themselves represents green space, and that's about 2 times the amount of green space that was in the previous design. The roads will be safety and access. A new HOA will be formed that will maintain the lawns, the landscaping, snow removal, and exterior maintenance of each unit. These landscaping buffers will provide privacy for residents of the entire community, both the townhome residents and the adjoining property residents. The 2-car design will allow for adequate parking and prevent parking on the street. A higher end product will meet demand for quality built and maintained units for residents not yet ready to buy in Kearney. These are artistic renderings of our townhomes. The reason why we've got artistic renderings versus the actual pictures is because we have upgraded our unit type from what we've built in the past. These are going to have a high-end design and nice finishes on the outside and inside. Every unit's going to have a 2-car garage, which is very unique. They will be 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, approximately 1,420 square feet. As the grade dictates, we'll have a lower level on many of these units, which will add another 400 to 500 square feet of livable space in the basement, and perhaps another bedroom and bathroom downstairs. So imagine a 2,000 square foot unit and the type of client that would be renting there. They'll have similar finishes that you see in homes in Greenfield. Those finishes include granite countertops, hard surface flooring, stainless steel appliances, stone and color variation on the exterior, and landscaping consistent with the area. These are actual photos of similar units that we have built. As you'll note, they have beautiful finishes. I know I've talked about that quite a bit, but I wanted everybody to see the type of homes that these are. These are beautiful. These are not your average townhomes. These are high-end townhouses. As we go to develop townhomes, a new homeowners association will govern this property. It will have a lot of different restrictions that will be created. Some of those restrictions will include no trampolines, no play sets, no dogs staked on leashes, no trash cans on the outside of the buildings, no parking on the street, no overnight parking. We'll even have certain breeds of dogs restricted. A few other things to note that the HOA will maintain. They will carry the insurance on the exterior of the property, so the individual tenants will not be responsible for the maintenance of the outside of the property. That will be handled by the HOA. That includes maintenance that pertains to yard. So, for example, the grass at Greenfield Townhomes will all be mowed on the same day and will always look nice. The snow will be removed. Landscaping will be maintained by the HOA. That's very unique, and that keeps a very vibrant and beautiful community over time. We wanted to create for you a true comparison so that you understand the type of tenant that we are going to be renting to at Greenfield Townhomes. So we did a comparison on some person, a homeowner in Greenfield, and what their monthly payment might be. So as you see in this graphic, the average sales price of perhaps $400,000, a loan amount of $320,000, that equates to about $1,850 a month for a mortgage payment. In the Greenfield townhomes, our monthly rents will average somewhere between $14.25 and $17.50. And that's really going to depend on whether there's a lower level that's finished and adds that extra square footage. So the type of tenant that's going to be renting here are people who can afford to buy a home in Kearney, but just aren't ready yet, or circumstance hasn't allowed them to do that. These are going to be wonderful families that live here and people that love Kearney and really need an opportunity to have a higher and nicer new rental property that they can trust in and know will be maintained and beautiful. And this is a type of tenant that's going to likely buy a house in Greenfield over time and definitely stay in Kearney.
Well, I think that kind of concludes a quick presentation. I think we'll turn it back over to the Board of Aldermen, the mayor, or the administrator at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey, Mr. Yates, for the presentation. At this point, I'm about ready to open up the floor for public comment. Ask before you speak that you state your name and address for record. And with that, Ryan, do we have anybody ready to speak?
We do, Mr. Mayor. Larry Hampson has raised his hand to speak.
Right, Mr. Hampton, if you could please state your name and address for record, and then the floor is yours.
Larry Hampton, Hampton Plumbing, 1026 Innovation Drive here in Kearney is my business address. I still live in Kearney out in the country. I work for Andy Mackey and Mike Yates. I have for some time. And a lot of the subdivision that he has mentioned, I have been in and I've been back to after been in for 2 or 3 years. And like they said, they're really nice communities. They're honorable men. They stand behind the word. They stand behind their properties. They're ethical. You know, I just think that Kearney, like they keep saying, needs something like this. We don't have anything quite like this. And I just want to say that I really hope that the Kearney will see that it's needed and you all will vote to accept their applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton, for your comment. Ryan, we'll go with the next.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we have Janelle. Janelle, please unmute and state your name for the mayor.
Hi, my name's Janelle Dunn. I'm here with my husband, Clifford Dunn. We live at 300 Prairie Point in Kearney, in Greenfield. I did write an email to everyone, so I won't reiterate everything in there, but we built our home with the assumption that these would be owned by other people, not rental units. So that's a big concern to us. One of the things that they mentioned is that in 2016, they sold a property, but how many have they built since then, or how many have they built total? That doesn't say that they won't do that with this. And rentals are not allowed by our covenants, our homeowners covenants. So I'm not sure why we would make an exception for this. And another thing is that on their slides, they mentioned that the rentals would be $1,400 to $2,000, but in their last slide, they said $1,425 to $1,750. So that's kind of a big discrepancy. I just wonder what the real number is.
Yeah, I think I'll jump back in here. Thank you for your comments. On that last piece, it was a function of Mike and I just not determining the top of the market. And a lot of that will be dependent upon if people want a kitchen in the basement or if they want a carpet, LVT tile, and then what we see is like the big need. So when we start up there and we start getting placement of some young professionals and we start seeing a trend one way or the other, it's conceivable that we could raise rent and do different things. So sorry about the discrepancy and the confusion.
Okay, but we use that comparison to say what the rentals are. So that's kind of an important thing to know. And then also on the 2016 is when you sold the property, but how many have you built and how many have you built since that was sold? And is that something we have to be concerned about? I'm
sorry, help me understand maybe a little deeper. What would the concern be?
You said that you had, the last time you had sold a duplex or a rental properties was in 2016. Because that's one of the concerns people have, is that they won't be managed by the same people and to the same standard.
Yeah, so I'll dive back in. Maybe to your friend, and let's make sure I come back and answer this fully. You said our HOA. The townhomes will have a different HOA. They will not be a part of Greenfield. And the advantage we have, and I'd ask everybody to listen carefully to this because it means a lot to us and the developer and to the city. We will have complete control over the home, the tenants that live there. That will be enforced through the CCR. So let's say in 10 years, we sell our fourplexes, which is conceivable. We go to sell those in 10 years. And maybe Mike or I move for whatever reason, we dispose of them. The CCNRs will still govern that you can't have a staked dog leash. You can't put a refrigerator outside, that one person mows the lawns. It still governs the policies and procedures of that community, which the city has a copy of some of them, but it's a pretty standard set of documents that is there to ensure that those covenants run with the land and with that property. And the city will have a say in exactly what those documents look like, but they will be a strict set of documents that are there for the benefit of the beautification of that community. Now, as far as how many we've built and sold since then, oh my goodness, just townhomes, maybe 65 or 70. We've been a part of brokering many more, and we've also built some apartments as well. But just on the multifamily side, which is what we call it when we build these attached products, I think we've probably done 250 total since 2016.
Yeah, Mr. Mackey, and everybody, at this point, the residents should be speaking their concerns directly to the board. So if you could hold off any further comments.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mackey, I'd appreciate it.
Mayor, if I can interject, it might help if Andy recognizes a question. Maybe he can write those questions down, and then after the public hearing, he can address some of those questions.
Absolutely. Ms. Dunn, did you have any further comments?
Just one. So if they were to sell it, then it sounds like the city would be responsible for enforcing the covenants if that were to happen. So that's just another concern that I think the board needs to consider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Brian?
Next, Mr. Mayor, we have Melissa. Melissa, if you could please unmute, state your name and address.
Hi, Melissa. If you could state your name and address for record, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm sorry. This is Kevin and Melissa Morrison. Address is 2132 Foxtail Drive in Greenfield. And a couple things I guess I'd like to go over. I felt that in the presentation that was inaccurate when we're talking about the home versus the renting. I understand that, you know, when you're taking the loan amount and that of a rent, but that also doesn't take into consideration that a homeowner, as far as their escrows, their PMI, their maintenance and so forth, that of a renter is not going to be, in my opinion, equal to from that standpoint. The other thing that I appreciate Mr. Hampton's input, but obviously I think he has a vested interest. So to me, that's a bit of a, in my opinion, a bit of a conflict of interest as far as giving his representation. I'm sure he's got a vested interest in further increase of developments, et cetera, as it relates to that. And just as nobody can give a guarantee on timelines, Mr. Mackey already stated that it's very well conceivable that you could sell the property within 10 years. And I think the majority as homeowners have a vested interest, if not most of us have at least 15 to 30 year mortgages as it relates to that. And already within 10 years, you're looking to potentially go out. And there's certainly nothing to stop that from happening sooner, depending on what, the economics of what transpires. I'm sure you're going to do what's in the best interest of yourself, no different than many employers have had to do what's in the best interest of themselves. So those are certainly some of my concerns as we look at that. The differences of HOA between the two. There's so many more things that are outside our control, and some verbiage was used as far as perhaps, et cetera. There's nothing of guarantee. Once this thing is built, we're left with it, and those of us in the neighborhood, we're stuck with what's to be here. And this is not why we bought within Kearney or the Greenfield community. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. Ryan,
Next,
who do we have
Mr.
next?
Yes, sir. Next, Mr. Mayor, we have John O. John, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
John, if you could state your name and address for record, you have the floor.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes, my name is John Oddie. I currently live in the Liberty area, but have considered moving my family of 5 to the Kearney area for quite some time for the sense of community, the school district, all of those things. And we would probably build in the Greenfield area, but we just haven't found, a place to live while we're building there. So to me, these seem like a great option for us and probably other families, that are growing and wanting to move to a community such as Kearney. So just wanted to state the comment or put it on the record that I feel like this is a great option for those looking to move into Kearney.
All right. Thank you, John.
Mm-hmm.
Next, Mr. Mayor, we have Bromer TD. If you could unmute and state your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Dave Bromert. I live at 2109 Foxtail Point in the Greenfield subdivision. And we moved up here just about a year ago now because we very much like the community, what we saw and that type of thing. And now this thing wants to be changed to suit the developer's needs here on it. But the developer did state one thing here that I believe his quote was, developer stated no negative impact on home values as they saw it. Well, will the developer guarantee minimum values on all Greenfield properties based on current values? Will they establish an escrow account and so forth to guarantee our home values if they decrease due to this? Because I know myself, if I was moving up here, I would not move up here if those were located in my subdivision right across from it. And they will be very close to my home. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ryan.
Next, Mr. Mayor, we have Mike Miller. Mike, if you could unmute and state your name and address.
Mike Miller, 1704 Cambridge Circle. We built in Jamestown Village probably 18 years ago. And it was brought to my attention here recently about the townhomes coming. My concern with it is that they will build these, rent them, occupy them for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, sell them off, and then there will become lower income rentals in the future, which is going to hurt property values of Greenfield, Jamestown Village. So I would encourage the board to not support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ryan, next.
Next, Mr. Mayor, we have David Marler. David, if you could unmute and state your address.
David Marler.
Mr. Marler.
Yes.
Would you be so kind? If I don't know if anybody else is getting feedback. I'm definitely getting feedback on my end. If you could be so kind, if you're not currently speaking, so everybody besides Mr. Marler and the board, if you could please mute
How's this, Mr. Mayor?
microphone, I would appreciate it.
Okay. How's this? I'm taking earbuds out.
That's good. You have the floor, Mr. Marler.
Yeah, I think something, I'm hearing it too, so I don't think it's me. David Marler, 2022 Greenfield Muse. I think it's easy when you hear rental units coming into your subdivision to have a knee-jerk reaction and say to yourself how terrible things are going to be. But I tried to take the due diligence to do some research on the homes, similar homes in the Northland area. I'm talking about rental townhomes. And I've looked at 4 or 5 developments 2 or 3 times since all this began. And the first thing that comes to me is, and the thing that's in common to all these townhomes, is the terrible traffic congestion on the streets, every one of them. And I've heard the developers say, we're not going to allow parking on the streets. There's going to be a lot of cars come with these residents. They're going to have children that drive. The families might have 2 cars. They could even have 2 children that drive. And where are all these cars going to go? You know, the first question I have is, can the developer restrict parking on a public street? I don't know if that's possible or not. It seems to me like that'd be a city decision. But if we do restrict parking on the street, where do the cars go? Many of these people, as they move into an area, even if they're temporary and they're building a new house in Greenfield Meadows, they've got furniture and everything stored in their garage. And that's a big problem, that a lot of people can't even use their garage if they have them, because they're full of all of their belongings from their previous home. 30-foot setback does not allow, to my knowledge, 2 full-size cars parked end to end without blocking the sidewalks. In all the developments, including Sariano and all the others up north, the sidewalks are all blocked. When people want to take their dog for a walk or walk in the evening with their children, they can't walk down the sidewalk because there's cars parked across the sidewalk. So my question is, where do you put all these cars? Do they go on Foxtail Drive? Do they go on Greenfield Drive? You know, those aren't in this subdivision that we're talking about. So that's a concern of mine. I've tried to research the Sariano townhomes, and you know, from the review of Andy Mackey in 2017 by the Kansas City Star, that article talked about their whole business plan was to build townhomes, lease them, and then once they're leased, let me back up, build townhomes, sell them to developers, but do not close with the developers until they're leased. And then the new buyers, private investors, group investors, buy multiple units, multiple buildings, whatever. And so, you know, they quickly get turned over according to the business plan that the Kansas City Star talked about in the interview. It was mentioned that they're not going to allow trash cans outside the house. And I think that's a great idea. So they're going to put them in the garage and have less room in the garage for cars to start with. So that's a concern. You know, I've sent all the aldermen and Mayor Pogue and Jim Eldridge my information. I'm sure it's gotten cycled around. I've put aerial photos of Sariano showing all the cars, 32 cars parked on the street in a 1-block area and 10 vehicles blocking the sidewalk. So, you know, where do they go with their cars? You know, we're not going to park them on the street. Where are they going to go? My other concern is on the intersections of Greenfield Drive and the new townhome street. The drawings that I've seen shows the driveways right close to the intersection. I'm sure the city has codes that says a driveway has to be so far away from the intersection. And so I think that's a concern when people come into the new development and leave with, proper access. Some of the reviews, how do you research some of these townhomes and find out how good they are? Well, I went to Better Business Bureau. I've been to Yelp. I've been to apartments.com, and none of them are really good. None of them are good. Most of them are 1-star and 2-star out of 5. I won't go through and tell you what everybody said. You can do that yourself, but the comments aren't favorable. The comments don't indicate that these are luxury townhomes. They don't indicate that they're high-end appliances. And maybe these developers are saying, we're going to do a totally different model than what we've done in Sariano, So maybe that's not a good example. But 2 homes have sold in Sariano. One sold for $215,000 in 2019, but I'm sure that the builders didn't sell them. The person that maybe second or third owners sold them, and another one sold for $131,000. So these units, if you look at the square footage in Sariano, they're very close to what we're talking about here. So, those are my concerns. I'm still not convinced it won't have an effect on our $130,000 or $40,000 townhome won't have an effect on our homes. But that's it. Thank you for allowing me to say my piece.
Thank you, Mr. Marlar. Ryan, who do we have next?
Mr. Mayor, next we have Robert. Robert, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Yes. This is Jim Bowers. I'm speaking on Robert's laptop. I'm a lawyer with the White Goss Rauschfeld law firm. We have offices at 4510 Bellevue, Kansas City, Missouri. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of Star Development Corporation and its Chief Executive Officer, Tim Harris. We're here in opposition to the rezoning of Greenfield townhomes. We're also in opposition to amending the plan. We're in opposition to amending the 2002 agreement between the developer and the city that requires the homeowners association declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions to contain a provision that no townhome unit may be rented to or occupied by any tenant of the owner. I'm also coordinating the testimony of 4 neighbors who are here in the room with me and wish to testify in opposition of the project. The basis of their opposition is simple. The developer of the Greenfield project made representations in 2002 to the community and the Board of Aldermen that the residential units would be developed and sold to buyers who would own and occupy those units. To implement the developer's representation, the city entered into an agreement with the developer requiring formation of a homeowners association with restrictions that restrict any dwelling unit on parcel A from being used as rental property. The property under discussion tonight is parcel A. That agreement was signed by the developer and the city and is in effect today and will remain in effect, that is, unless you remove it by amending the agreement. The neighbors are here tonight to tell you that they relied on the agreement and it's restricting residential use of those units when they decided to purchase their homes, those homes in which they live today. They're concerned that changing the rules and allowing rental use of those units will change the character of their neighborhood and will reduce the value of their homes. The 4 neighbors who are here and wish to testify in the order in which they will testify are John Coxon, David Major, Adam Linger, and Tim Harris. We urge you to vote no on the proposed rezoning of the Greenfield townhomes. John?
Good evening. My name's John Coxon. I live at 2026 Greenfield Mews. And first of all, I want to thank all of y'all for your service to our community. You know, especially during these last few months with so many unknowns, your service has been very appreciated by us. I want you to know I am the president of the Village of Greenfield Homeowners Association Incorporated, and we're a registered nonprofit by the state of Missouri. To clarify this, we are the 20 homes on Greenfield Mews with the small pond in the middle. And we, the homeowners, are for the most part retired and on a fixed income. When discussions of raising taxes and or continuing bonds for schools and other city improvements, I voted yes. As representatives of the taxpayers and homeowners of Kearney, Missouri, I beg you to listen, read, and react to the desires of the tax-paying citizens of this city. We are not opposed to development. In fact, since I've moved here 4 years ago, that's all we've had is development in our area. But we are opposed to rentals. All those homes that have been developed have been owned. This agreement that's been discussed by Fishing River Development, the city of Kearney on April 23rd of 2002, which you all have copies of, and which I have a copy of here, clearly states line number 4. Homeowners association restrictions shall be provided that restrict any dwelling units on partial A from being used as rental property. As representatives of the tax-paying homeowners of Kearney, you can do the right thing. Vote no to rentals on partial A. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members, aldermen, members. My name is David Major. I live at 2002 Greenfield Mews, which is just 2 houses to the east of the Tract A or Partial A on southwest corner of 19th Street in Greenfield Drive. My wife and I had a villa built in 2013. We moved in on August the 1st, 2013. At that time, the Greenfield community being developed was ownership only. Nothing was zoned for rental property. We would not have purchased that property and built that villa if that area to the west of us was zoned as rental property. That the Greenfield development area consists of 300,000 plus to the upper $400,000 homes and villas. And the families have moved to that area for a stable family environment. They've paid a good price for their homes. The neighborhood area adjacent to the planned part or rezoning area, which is just south of Tract A, is now almost finished. The value of that property, as well as the overall property in Greenfield, will be decreased accordingly if that rental project is approved. Many of the homeowners that I talked to while canvassing the area with the petition had no idea of this planned change. Also, not one person I talked to was in favor of this proposed change, and that was members of Greenfield Mews, the villas, Greenfield proper, 19th Street, and homes in Jamestown Village. So that covers the surrounding area as best that I could cover. Partial A or Tract A should remain homeownership only. Rezoning will simply be a grave disservice to the many homeowners in and around the Greenfield Drive. And also that rental units will certainly not be built with the same quality as they would be if that property remains as ownership only property. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And I hope that you vote no to this proposed change. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Adam Lingar. I live at 213 Old Trail Run there in Greenfield. Appreciate everyone's time. My neighbors have said it best. I don't need to add a whole lot. I think the basic fact of the matter is that we moved to the neighborhood knowing that these, while being multifamily, would be for sale units only. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the Aldermen. I'm a resident of 1620 Marabella Court in Kearney. Wanted to speak a little bit regarding the proposed project here. I myself am a developer, been in this business my entire adult life. I can tell you a little bit about these type projects. I've seen many of them come through in my lifetime. Every one of them was sold as the best thing since sliced bread. It's going to be the best townhome project that's ever been developed in the Northland. It's going to command the highest rents of any project that's ever been built in the Northland. And there will be no problems. It's nothing but good things will come out of it. Well, let me give you just a few facts about these type developments. For one, they're claiming $1,450 to $2,000 a month rents. My opinion is Kearney cannot support that type of rent. Even if they can, people that can pay that kind of rent can buy a home for $350,000, $400,000 and pay a payment for the same amount. So why would they pay that in rent? They claim that the HOA, they control the HOA and there's not going to be any problems. Well, they can change any covenant or any restriction at any time because they're the developer. So any of these items that they say they're going to restrict against can be changed at will. With these type of rents, the only way they could command that type of rent is maybe have two families in a unit. There may be a few people pay that, but let me tell you what happens over time. Most of your Section 8 housing doesn't start as Section 8 housing. A lot of times it starts just like this type development. They rent them for a while, but at some point these gentlemen are going to sell this project. I know they claim they're not going to, but if you look at the article that I sent you from the newspaper that I think was in 2016, 2017 Kansas City Star article, where they spoke on how they sold these units, a lot of times to folks from outside of the area, perhaps California, Washington, someplace else that never see these units. And they buy them based on a return only. Once these folks buy this and they expect a certain return, well, once that unit can't be rented and they can't get the rents that they're expecting, that person in California or Washington or Utah or wherever it is, they don't know where Kearney, Missouri is, nor do they care. They're just looking at the return. And to get that return, they really don't care who they rent it to. So if someone comes along with a Section 8 voucher, they'll take it because they're guaranteed the rent the first of the month, every month, and they'll rent that unit Section 8. I've seen that happen so many times in these exact type projects, and it goes downhill from there. A lot of transit people, a lot of problems, a lot of crime, property values decline. There's just tons of issues that come along with it, schools as well. I would hope that we could gain your support to vote no on this project, as it's not good for Kearney and it's not good for surrounding communities.
That's ridiculous, Tim.
Mr. Mackey, your time period has expired. I'm going to ask you to hold any comments until you have a floor again. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bowers, Mr. Harris, Mr. Leingar, and the two other gentlemen that spoke. Brian, who has the floor next?
Next up, Mr. Mayor, we have a phone caller in 332-8712. If you could please state your name and address.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, everyone. My name is Jared Hinkle. I live at 11204 Northeast 113th Terrace in Liberty, Missouri. And just real quickly, about 12 years ago, I moved from out of state to the area, and I looked over the Northland, researched the school districts up in Kearney, and I looked high and low for a nice property to live in while I found a home. And I could not find a suitable property for my young family. Kids were 2 and 4 at the time, and my wife was still living at our current residence out of state. And so I ended up finding a nice townhome to live in Kansas City, and have been a Liberty School District resident ever since. But in looking at this property, if this was available to me at the time, with where the schools are located, the rating of the school district in Kearney, and the nice small town feel that I felt when I was in the city, I really feel like I would continue to live in the Kearney city limits. Looks like a terrific location. We all know that the Kearney schools are very highly rated, and I feel like I'm a great example of what Kearney wasn't offering at the time, and from the sounds of things, still is not offering. Just appreciate your time. And as a second note, I've worked with Andy Mackey and Mike Yates professionally. They have represented my home in sales of my home. They've helped me find property. I considered having Mike Yates build me a property. I've seen some of the townhomes. I know these gentlemen personally, and they are, without a doubt, the most ethical business folks that I've dealt with in the real estate industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Ryan, who do we have next?
Next, Mr. Mayor, we have Don's iPhone. Don, if you could please unmute and state your address.
Yes, this is Dawn Stombaugh at 203 Old Trail Run. And first of all, I want to say the gentleman, I don't get his name, but was the expert in this type of housing and stuff. I agree everything he has said, because we came from a subdivision in the Northland that started building townhomes in our subdivision, and everything that he said was true that happened in our subdivision. My question is, what type of exterior structure is going to be on these houses? And two, who's going to be responsible for putting in the sidewalks, the developer or the city? And are we sure these are going to be rentals or leases?
All right, I'll hold those comments and allow the applicant to answer those questions at the end when they are allowed the time to answer questions. Do you have anything further to discuss?
No, that's it. That's those three questions.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And like I said, your question specific to the application, we will allow the applicant to answer questions here momentarily.
Okay,
Brian?
next, Mr. Mayor, we have Dan Pixler. Dan, if you could please unmute and state your address.
My name is Dan Pixler. Address is 316 Prairie Point in the Meadows at Greenfield. I'm about a block and a half away from parcel A. And one thing, the public notice as it was issued really didn't mention the fact that the main issue at stake here is the rental restriction, not really whether the front of the houses is going to look one way or another.
Mr. Pixler?
Pardon?
Could you maybe scoot closer to the device you're using to call in on? I'm having a hard time hearing you, sir.
Is this better?
That's a little better, yes.
Okay, is that better yet? Maybe my microphone's not so good. Okay, I'll get as close as I can here and speak up. So I'm 316 Prairie Point in the Meadows at Greenfield, about a block and a half away from parcel A. And I really felt that the public notice that went out should have highlighted the fact that the rental removal was a pretty critical point in the proposal, because without that, you know, it doesn't go forward, being as they are planning on renting them. So it was rather conspicuous by its absence. If I hadn't heard from a neighbor, I wouldn't have known that. So I would urge in the future for public notices, you know, kind of get the real crux of the issue in that public notice so people are informed. It would, you know, allow us to know what's going on that much better. As far as the proposal itself, the rental units, you know, in a neighborhood of what are now pretty much $400,000 and $500,000 houses is clearly going to hurt the values of the houses. It always does. It always does. Also, the rental units bring parking, trash, traffic, and law enforcement issues. And, you know, we don't need those kinds of problems. And there's not a single resident in the subdivision that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of them that are in favor of this change. I'd like to suggest a compromise. Why not build multifamily units and sell them as condos? Each side gives a bit. That's my 2 cents. Thank you for hearing me out, and good job, Mayor and Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Pixler, for your comment. Ryan, who do we have next?
Mr. Mayor, next we have Dustin Hampton. Dustin, if you could unmute and please state your address.
Am I on?
There you go, sir.
Dustin Hampton, 911 Stonecrest, Kearney. I am in favor of this project. I think Kearney's in desperate need of rentals. In opposition to what a lot of people have said, I know there's a lot of people. I don't live next door to this property by any means. I'm a little farther across town, but there's been a lot of concern with the rental aspect. And what I see is if I was living near it, I would be more concerned with them being sold. The square footage restrictions, only mid 1,300 square footage. So a guy that's worked construction my whole life, we could slap those up and sell them for 125 to 150,000. So I asked the board, you know, think about what I don't think everybody's completely thought through is if these guys or somebody else goes in and builds a $125,000 unit and sells them out. Now you're looking at people with $500 to $600 mortgages plus escrow, $850, $900s, whatever. I think it's going to go downhill worse or as bad as some of these horror stories that some people are trying to paint. I ask you think about everybody of the community plus the people we have lost. As you've had a couple callers call in saying that there was nowhere available for them, and think about that. I think I can understand why they may be a little upset or nervous about this, but I do know Mike and Andy personally, and believe me, they're going to build the same quality of product for you personally as they are for themselves, if not as good or better. So they're not going to throw up some cheap flimsy that's going to blow over in the first storm and create a mess. I hope you take into consideration of everybody of the community and what potential this could have to help our community keep growing in the direction as we're going. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Mayor, we have Mary Davis. Mary, if you could please state your address.
Mary Davis. My husband and I live at 2012 Greenfield Mews. We've lived here 10 years now. We've been in the Kearney area for a little over 20 years. We moved here thinking that this would be a very nice retirement place. Obviously, we do live on a fixed income. Obviously, this is our most valuable asset. Obviously, rental properties, they may sound good and look good in the beginning, but over time, like another gentleman mentioned, it could turn into Section 8 housing. Maybe will be, you know, it won't happen that way. But now I also have a safety concern. Since my husband and I are both mid-70s, the more people you have with kids and their friends and people just running about, you don't know how safe you really are anymore, because right now we know our neighbors and our neighbors know us. And I think it's totally unfair to the new property owners that have spent a lot of money to build in a very nice area And it was bad enough when they widened 19th Street to cause more traffic and confusion, and adding all these townhomes with everybody having at least at a minimum of 2 cars in each family. And probably by the teenagers, if they have a couple of teenagers, we could have like 4 cars. Thank you for listening to me. I hope and pray that this does not go through. I'm very strongly opposed to the rental property. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ryan, who do we have next?
Mr. Mayor, next we have S. Young. S. Young, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Hi, my name's Adam Young. That's my wife's account. Boy, it really comes down to trust, doesn't it? Andy, you've sold us a pretty good project, but I've known you 20 years. We went to college together. We also went to college with John Oddie, who spoke early on your behalf. So far, we've heard from only the people that either have a vested interest, and forgive me, Larry, you are an upstanding person of the community, and your business is an upstanding part of our community, and your son is taking on your business, and we really applaud that. You're a great asset to the community. But so far, we've only heard from people that don't live in Kearney, or people that would benefit from Kearney, from this project. I strongly oppose it. I bought my dream home last December in Greenfield, 303 Old Trail Run, with the hopes of living here the rest of my life and raising my kids here. And I strongly oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Next.
Mr. Mayor, next we have Sean Wolpert. Sean, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes,
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, my husband and I live at 2101 Prairie Creek Drive. And I'd just like to give a little bit of a different perspective. We recently bought a unit like this, a townhome type unit in Waukee, Iowa. We did that last summer. It was just the type of thing that we wanted to be closer to family when we visited and that type of thing. But we spent, it was about 19 months looking in the area, West Des Moines, Waukee, west of Des Moines, those communities up there. Very, very nice communities. And the townhome concept is a big trend in that area. I don't know if you've been up there recently, but there are a lot of these types of homes. And I will tell you that what we looked at, most of these types of homes, ours is one of the fourplex, are for sale. And however, we did look at some that were rentals. There is a really big difference in the maintenance of those that are for sale and those that are rentals. We had the opportunity to go through and look at a lot of them, built at different times. Some had been renovated, that type of thing. But you can tell the difference between those that are for sale and those that are rentals. Now, I agree that Kearney probably needs something like this. However, I believe that they should be sold and they should have permanent owners. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wolpert.
Mr. Mayor, next we have Melissa. Melissa, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Hi, yes, Melissa Morrison at 2132 Foxtail Drive. I just want to state I appreciate everyone coming forth and speaking their opinion on this matter. I appreciate very much Mr. Young being very blunt about it, and appreciate those that know that this is a serious matter, that we are taking this seriously. I don't find it anything, I guess, to be lighthearted about or joking. We as well have built what we thought to be our dream home here. We moved to Missouri 3.5 years ago. I am a Missourian, but we were in North Carolina for 12 years. We lived in a neighborhood that ended up having 2 HOAs in the neighborhood. And what that does to a neighborhood, it absolutely wreaks havoc on it, because you do not have the same standards for the homes as the rest of the community. So how it will impact will be greatly. When we sold our home that we were living in Missouri 3 years ago, we were in the situation, like I heard John and someone else state that they needed somewhere to rent. We had to do that too, because our home that we were building here was not ready. We were not concerned with the fact that we weren't able to find a rental in Kearney, because it was temporary for us to build a home in a community, in a development where we looked at it as seeing properties that were well maintained. We looked at it as somewhere that we thought we could potentially stay and retire in, which I think a lot of people in this neighborhood are feeling that same way. I understand the need to have rentals in this area. I get it. Kearney is a wonderful place. I work in Liberty school system. I love Kearney. I love being here. I love being close to Liberty. I think there are other areas that can be looked at for rentals that would be better suited than bringing these type of rentals into a neighborhood with homes in the upwards of your 3s all the way to 500,000. Rentals will affect our value of our home. It will impact the area. It will impact how things are maintained. It is not the right place for it. I understand the need for rentals, but I strongly oppose it as well. And I hope everyone takes it very seriously. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
Mr. Mayor, next we have Garrett Seiler. Garrett, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Yes, this is Garrett Seiler. Currently own Seiler Construction and GJM Development. My address is 10025 Lakeview Circle, Liberty, Missouri. We purchased Meadows at Greenfield in 2016 from the Kretzingers. And during that time, we've developed 3 phases. We currently have 3 phases left, my partner and I. There's a multi-family ground that we currently own. And there's also a commercial ground that is been sitting there on that corner for quite some time that, you know, I'm hoping that would get developed in recent time, if not now or in the future from someone. But with that being said, is I understand people's concerns with rentals get a bad name because they think it's low income. Well, since we came into Greenfield, we've actually have 3 types of builders. We have a high-end builder that builds 450,000 to 500 plus. We have a production builder that builds anywhere from 400 to 450,000. And then we also have a starter builder that just is building 350 to 400 just for a starter home for families that, you know, maybe just got a teaching job or just, you know, grew up in Kearney all their life and they just got to get started somewhere. And, you know, Greenfield's a perfect place for people to get started. There's some parents that currently live in there. And then we also have 2 villa communities right in the same area where grandparents and their mothers are there. It's a great community where everyone can actually just buy a piece of property and just have phases of their life by staying in the same community. And what I want to say in this multifamily that Yates and Mackey has presented, my partner Jerry and I have really done a lot of homework because we want to pass along the vision that Kretsinger had whenever he started developing this. And we take pride in what we do. I currently seen a lot of properties that Yates and Mackey have. I currently build in those areas, and our project is high end. They take pride in what they do, and they keep the values of my properties at a high rate also. With all this being said too, a strong HOA is very important, no matter what you're in. If it's rentals, if you're buying a house, I currently am on the board on both of my HOAs, and you have to enforce the HOAs. People just, I don't care if they're renting or own the house. I currently fight every single day making sure people stay off the streets, vandalism, people painting their house, making sure they keep the upkeep of their homes, to make sure values of other people around the area take pride in what they do and they get their value. We would not be for this if we didn't think that it could actually hold value, if not increase it, with people that are moving into Kearney. And also, rentals are not always for people that have bad income. I mean, the last person that spoke had some good points. You know, someone could be going through a divorce, become a widow, etc., or maybe just sold their home. I have a lot of clients that they're in a pickle right now where they want to sell their house, but they can't because they know the real estate's so hot right now. And the next thing you know, they basically have to wait 6 to 8 months for their house to be built. I think this would be a great opportunity for people to come in there, store some of their property, sign a lease for 6 to 9 months, and just wait for their dream home to be just right up the street. So with that being said, I'm for it. I'm excited. And once again, all we're really trying to vote is changing this to rentals with the multifamily. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Seiler.
Mr. Mayor, next we have Travis. Travis, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Travis Hedrick, Hedrick Construction Company, 1063 Catchman Drive. I think Kearney needs some multifamily. Certainly, I'm not sure this is the right place and the right demographic for it. One thing I've noticed on the plans, there's a good buffer to the south and to the east, but there's not one along 19th Street, or it doesn't appear to be much of one. If these go in, this is going to be highly visible. We'll get our new interchange in. It's going to be one of the first areas people that come to town see. I think that would be a good interest to get a buffer on those plans. And I know they've got good intentions to make this look nice and keep it nice, but down the road, if it changes hands or anything happens, I think it'd be in the city's best interest to have a good looking buffer there and make sure that it stays looking nice. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hedrick. Brian, do we have anybody else? It does not look like it currently.
Currently, we do not have any other hands raised, Mr. Mayor. Oh, and 2 just popped up, sir. Mr. Mayor, we have Deborah. Deborah, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Hopefully you can hear me. My name is Deborah James. I live at 2200 Prairie Creek Drive. I've lived here since 2009 when Tom Kretzinger still was a developer. I've seen a lot of changes in the subdivision, good and bad. I don't approve of the rental units going in. We do know they need that in Kearney, but this is not the place for it. I totally agree with the depreciation in the decrease in property values with this being there, the increased noise, the increased traffic. And like he said, the cars, we have cars on the street, on my street, that doesn't, and it does make a traffic issue. So my vote would be no. I don't think this is the right place to do it. I do agree Kearney needs rental, upscale rental, but this is not the place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James.
Mr. Mayor, next we have Melissa again.
Hi, this is Kevin Morrison. I apologize. Just actually a question. I've heard the comment several times now about people utilizing these properties for basically as they're having other properties built. Like myself, I had to live in Zona Rosa for 3 months, and it was difficult to find short-term leasing. So question as to whether or not these properties there seems to be a lot of interest in that regard. Are these properties going to be short-term rentals as well?
All right, Thanks all.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, next we have Michelle's iPhone. Michelle, if you could please unmute and state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Brady Cannon. I live at 301 Prairie Point here in Kearney in the Greenfield Meadows development. My wife and I, we have 4 kids, and we bought in Greenfield community because we liked that it was a community that we felt we could be in a place with less traffic, less groups of people, so that we could raise our kids here and have a great sense of home and feeling. I don't doubt that Kearney needs more rental units, more places that people can find short-term housing if they need it, because that happens to everybody when you're looking for a home, when you need to buy. But I don't think that it's a fitting place for these homes. As it's been mentioned many times, when you have homes that are going from 350 to 550,000, and then you throw a bunch of townhomes in right at the entrance, that increases the amount of people coming in, the traffic, the amount of trash, the crime, everything. We love being able to go outside and talk to the neighbors because we know them. We love being able to have our kids outside and for them to say hi to the neighbors. But then when you have people that come in that may be staying for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, short lease, I don't think that would benefit the neighborhood at all. I do oppose having rental units placed in at the end or right at that in parcel A. I'd be pretty frustrated because if we would have known that, we wouldn't have moved to this community. We moved here because we thought it was a great place where we could stay and raise our family and stay for who knows how long as we could, hopefully. But again, if we had ever thought that there'd be rental properties going in that close to our home, that would change our decision. We would not have come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy or Mr. Mackey, Mr. Yates, I will give you the opportunity. Just give it a few more seconds. I'm not seeing any more hands requesting to speak for or against the application. So with that, I will let Andy, Mr. Mackey or Mr. Yates make a final comment to summarize and answer any questions you wish to answer.
Do we close public comment before we do that, or do we just do it right now?
Seeing no one else move, I will close the floor for public comment.
Well, I took some notes and I hope they're good ones. So I'll try to address everything that I can. And there's an overarching theme with rentals that they're going to hurt our value, crime and traffic, trash, congestion. I think a couple of those points, traffic is a concern, congestion is a concern, but that's the same concern whether they're rentals or not. Kearney's not a town that's known for crime. And by bringing in high-end rentals that are up to 2,000 square feet, that doesn't in any way, shape, or form give someone the right to demonize a renter. I rented, my partner Mike Yates rented. A lot of the folks on this call, I'm sure, rented when they were younger. A lot of divorcees, military families rent. I know that in Benson Place here, there's a lot of doctors that are renting while they build their home. But I'll move on to David Marler's points. He talked a lot about restriction of parking. The one thing that he failed to mention to the group, Serrano, we don't own. We did build, but we built it for somebody. We didn't ever own Serrano. So all of the comments on that were misplaced for sure. The big thing on Serrano was parking. He kept bringing that up. You can't walk anywhere. None of that applies because we're doing a 2-car garage townhome. So one unit could quite comfortably supply 4 parking spots. So also on parking, we're happy to invite the city to put an ordinance on the road to help ensure no parking, and it will be enforced on the lease. So whatever the city seems necessary there as we go through the platting process, we'd welcome that for sure. Dan Pixler, you said a lot of good comments. You said it always hurts the neighborhood, always. We don't know where that's coming from. We haven't seen that here. We haven't seen it in Liberty. We appreciate that theme from everybody, but it's definitely not well founded. The one thing we didn't hear from anybody in the community is where it's hurt anybody, and it certainly hasn't hurt down here. And we've been asked to bring these rentals to Kearney for years by members of the community, so we're looking forward to doing that. Mary Davis made a comment about safety, and I can't respond to that because I can't with good conscience say that people that rent are any more unsafe. I don't know Adam Young. I don't know who he is. He said went to college together. Sean Wolpert references Iowa. We don't know where they came from, so I can't respond to that. Mr. I think Hadwick of Habit Construction, the comment on the buffer, that's not a bad idea. We'd like to continue that discussion as well. Deborah talked about increased noise in cars. That's one of those discussion points that is irrelevant to rental at all. It's everybody wants to have a nice, easy walk on the street, but this neighborhood was intended to have multifamily there one way or the other, and that was going to mean more noise and more cars. We heard a lot about, I think I had 3 or 4 people say this, we know that Kearney needs it. We know they need it, but this is not the place. We heard it. And if not here, then where? And if not us, then who? The time is now. We've worked very hard on this. We definitely respect Mr. Cannon's comments about he wants less traffic, but whether we build these owner occupied or rentals, and I hope the board realizes that if we did end up building them for some reason owner occupied, we do lose control. We don't have a rental restriction, and people can live a little bit differently. And these are people that, in my opinion, I would prefer transient folks that come and go, that are growing the community, that go by the next house. Brady also said he knows we need more rentals, just not here due to traffic and crime. As far as the group of people that Tim Harris had with him, I don't believe, in my humble opinion, Tim is the authority on all things Kearney when it comes to representation of the normal person, the common man. He said in reference and invoked the term Section 8. That's not okay with me. Those people need places. This won't be one of them. We would welcome an ordinance for market rate rents. And that's a legal term that we'd be happy to have in our ordinance, that these are always market rate. In fact, we've done that before with other communities where they just wanted some assurance. So we're happy to have a market rate rent discussion. Very much so. Interesting that same developer, as I look out across Woodneath, across the golf course, there's the highest end community is coming to Kansas City. It's called Eagle Point. Eagle Point has lots that are $250,000 down to $150,000. They've been reserved for a long time. Tim himself is putting in multifamily at the entrance to that community. His comments were not well-founded, and they were in direct contraindication to what he does on a daily basis.
Andy, we're not.
You better chime in. Okay.
Mr. Mackey, please continue. I'm not for sure who was trying to speak there, but you still have the floor. Go ahead.
But we are grateful for all the comments. We definitely, I think if it was me, I'd be concerned as well. Anytime there's change, there's reason to be concerned because there's uncertainty. Mike and I are good men. We do what we say, and we are very excited to bring something very high into Kearney that we've been asked by the likes of Steve Thorne, Cindy Stockton, and others for a long time. We're confident that we can tell the aldermen and you, Mr. Mayor, we will bring you something that Greenfield will be proud of. We're very confident, and we're excited to do so. Thank you guys very much.
All right, Mr. Mackey, thank you. Reminding the public floor is closed, so we will seek no additional input on the subject. At this time, I will give the opportunity for the board to discuss or ask any questions from the applicant. We do have Kathy Barger, one of our elected alderwomen. She is our chair, she is our representation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I would like to start with Kathy. Kathy, do you have any questions or discussions or anything to add?
I would say that Planning and Zoning did pass this 5-0, I think. I think that evening at that public hearing, there was no one that spoke against the project. Everyone that spoke there that night was in favor of it. So Planning and Zoning Board listened to that testimony and made their decision based on that. I would say for myself, I firmly believe that in order to have a healthy, vibrant community, we must offer a wide range of housing opportunities to our citizens, including multifamily developments, both rental and owner occupied. Young professionals, recent grads, they all need a place to come to Kearney and enter into our housing market. As a community, we need those applicants in the employment pool to attract new businesses. If the community is going to grow, we have to have those new businesses. And one of the complaints I hear from business owners is that they don't have people to staff their businesses. Providing decent, affordable housing is probably the first step in bringing those people to Kearney. Having said that, however, I don't believe in changing the rules midstream for this particular neighborhood. I still support owner-occupied multifamily housing in the neighborhood. And I would be very excited to see other multifamily rental property develop other places, but I would hate at this point to change the rules for this community.
All right, Alderwoman Steiner, do you have any questions for the applicant or discussion?
I do not, Mayor.
Alderman Holt.
Well, I kind of share Kathy's feeling of, I think there's a real need in this community. And I just think that this is a really tough one for me, but most of those people did move into that area thinking that that was owner occupied property. And in changing it to rental does change their perspective of what they were buying, kind of like bait and switch that I mean, it's not actually, but I mean, it kind of feels that way to some of them. I do think that we need some rental in this. I've said that for many years because we have kids who they go off to college, come back, and they have to live in another town because we don't have anywhere for them to rent. However, in this area over here, we have a lot of senior citizens. We have a lot of folks right there at that end that this would directly affect. And so at this time, I am in favor of them building the townhomes. I just think that they need to be owner occupied.
Okay. Alderwoman Spencer.
And I also concur with Kathy and Dan. I think that to change the rules midstream is not good. The people in this neighborhood and the neighborhoods surrounding it, they had a certain vision. They were told certain things, and we need to support what they were told. Kearney, I also agree that Kearney does need high-end rentals. But this isn't the place. These need to be owner occupied. I'm excited for the project, just owner occupied.
All right, that concludes any discussion or questions from the board. Next, I'm going to ask the board if we entertain a motion. If you could,
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think what we're hearing is great feedback for Mike and I. And I think the comments have been well received by the board. And I think Mike and I at this point would like to rescind our application for the ordinance change, because I think we would like to start the process of building owner occupied there. So I don't know that we need to call a vote tonight, because Mike and I are going to rescind that application and put a new one in the coming months to go owner occupied. We'll do a little bit more due diligence. We'll work through that. I'm getting some thumbs up on the video screens. I'm getting some head nods and some smiles, but affordable housing and living smaller and nicer is what everybody's trying to do, and whether it's a rental or not. And it sounds like maybe that's not the spot for rental. So I think Mike and I'd like to reload, and we'll come back and go from there.
Okay, you've heard per the applicant after the public input that they have chosen to rescind their application for consideration this evening. Mr. Administrator, next item under business for public hearings.
Mr. Mayor, do we need to table that then?
I don't know what there's to table. The applicant has rescinded their request. Jim, what do you recommend we do here?
Well, if they're withdrawing, certainly the action.
Yeah, there's nothing else to.
There's nothing more to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be my. I don't know that the. I think it can't be carried further without another public hearing process.
Okay, I was just checking to make sure we stayed in sunshine law.
Mr. Mayor, the next item of business. Let's see. The next item of business is another public hearing. Tom and Anna Christopher have applied for a conditional use permit amendment to the Fun Farm. They are seeking to expand their use of their main barn structure as a year-round assembly event space. The main barn structure is used for storage, restrooms, and a gift shop as identified in the approved conditional use permit. Enclosed in the agenda is Alderman Holt. I don't know if you got some background noise coming in on that on your phone. Something's got some background noise. Anyway, enclosed in the agenda packet is a staff report explaining their request with staff recommendations, and David Pavlich may wish to give a verbal summarization of that report. After a public hearing was held on March the 9th by the Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the application contingent upon meeting all staff comments. P&Z liaison Alderman Barger may like also to further report on the details. And after any remarks from the applicant, it'd be recommended that the floor be open to public comment. So, Mr. Pavlich.
I would just like to reiterate that the previous conditional use permit application called out the large building for use of storage, restrooms, and a gift shop. The proposal is for a year-round event type of space, which changes the kind of the use of that building, its type of use, and would end up requiring additional parking spaces that wouldn't be needed otherwise. So there is included in the ordinance requirement that they do ADA parking of a hard surface, and there would be a few more spaces than would normally be required on just the storage or the retail side of it. I've talked with Tom, and he has said that is scheduled, but he should be here tonight. I think I saw a Tom on the list of participants. So I think if he wants to address the board, he can talk a little bit further about that too.
And Mr. Christopher, if you're on, now's your time to discuss your plan for the board.
What was the question? Board, please. What was the question again there?
Now is your time to discuss your application request.
Still having trouble hearing.
You have to discuss your application request.
Oh, the application. Oh, you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You hear us? Yeah, originally we started out with just a fall venue, And now we've kind of wanted to move on and maybe have some other events. We've been approached by a lot of people about using the barn for some events. We had one fundraiser there last year. And especially with the way things are now with the COVID-19, it would really help to have some other events to help pay. We don't know what kind of fall we're going to have this year or even next year. So we think we got a nice facility and it'd be a nice addition to do some events there. Is there some questions, or is that what she was asking, or?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for right now. Thank you, Mr. Christopher. At this point, if you are wanting to speak for or against the application request, I'll ask that you raise your hand or hit star 9 on your phone. Have the floor open. Seeing no movement, we will close the floor for public comment. And I'm sorry, just as I was closing it, there was a hand that did stick up. So it was while I was speaking. So before I did close, I believe there was a Janelle that raised her hand. Janelle, if you could speak, unmute yourself, speak your name and address for record, please.
Yes, Janelle Dunn, 300 Prairie Point. I fully support the petition for the special use permit. We've had several times where it's been needed here in Kearney to have a place to have something where you could have events, parties, get-togethers. I realize with COVID that's an issue right now, but when we get through this, it would be wonderful to see them have that opportunity.
Thank you for your input. Any other public input? All right, seeing no movement, I'll close the floor. Discussion from the board. Alderwoman Barger, do you have anything to discuss or ask the applicant?
I don't. I think the notes from the planning and zoning meeting were adequate for the thing, and I love this idea. We always need more event space.
Okay. Alderwoman Steiner.
Concur with Alderman Barger that we do need this event space. Be a great asset.
Alderman Holt.
I too think this is a great deal. I am concerned about how minimal concrete we're putting down for ADA. I think that if we have a larger group, we may need more ADA accessible parking spaces because we don't know what kind of activities are going to end up being there. So I kind of be in favor of expanding some ADA parking, but other than that, I'm all for it.
Hey, Dick, do you mind if I address Dan's comment?
Yeah, please do. I was going to ask you too.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, the reason for 4, that's based on the number of parking spaces required. And ADA specifies how many spaces in a certain size parking lot should have it, how many should be ADA. So that's where that number came from. I think some places, maybe, hospitals or churches, some of those uses that might have extra need for ADA spaces can choose on their own, maybe to add some additional ones, but we just base it on what's required.
I understand that. And that's why I said it's just something that I think would really benefit up there, because I do think that there will be some buses on things. There will be different things that happen up there, graduation type things for small schools and different things that would have older people that we may could use more than 4 spaces. That was my only concern.
Alderwoman Spencer.
I think this is a wonderful addition. I'm delighted.
Okay, I believe there's no questions for the applicant really to respond to. So with that, Mr. Administrator, if you could read by title only the proposed ordinance change.
Mr. Mayor, enclosed in the agenda packet is the following ordinance, and the title is an ordinance amending a conditional use permit for Fun Farm.
All right, board, if you can consider entertain a motion.
So moved.
I second it.
All right, Jim, take roll, please.
Alderman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Holt,
Aye.
Alderman Steiner,
Aye.
Alderman Barger.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the vote is unanimous on the first read. Would you like me to read the second?
Go ahead and read by title only, please.
An ordinance amending a conditional use permit for Fun Farm.
I make a motion to approve on second read.
I second that.
Alderman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Holt,
Aye.
Alderman Steiner,
Aye.
and Alderman Barger.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous, Mr. Mayor. The ordinance is passed.
Great. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. We have no old business, which we will move to our items under new business.
I'm going to try to share you back the agenda. Oh, we'll get back there. Okay, Mr. Mayor, the next item of business has to do with a resolution adopted. I'm echoing.
Yeah.
When you turn your face away from your computer, it's hard to hear you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, enclosed in 8A of the agenda is a proposed resolution authorizing Mayor Poe to accept $964,586.44 in CARES Act funding from Clay County. While more information is enclosed in the agenda packet explaining the eligible expenses, the CARES Act provides for that payments from the fund may be used only to cover the costs that are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the corona disease 2019. Were not accounted for in the budget most recently approved as of March 27th, 2020, the date of the enactment of the CARES Act and for the state or government, and were incurred during the period that begins March 1st and ends on December the 20th. Those funds cannot be used to cover revenue shortfalls. As noted in a May 4th meeting with the Board of Aldermen, the city has spent very little at this point, approximately $5,000 on computer work from work home solutions, and approximately $1,000 on PPE. The fire district has expended approximately $8,500, and we believe that they should be eligible to receive reimbursement from these funds. These funds will only be used, it will be the only way that the city can be reimbursed for COVID-related sick leave, as the private sector will receive tax credits that would not apply to the city or the fire district. And we believe those funds should be shared again with the fire district. Approval of this resolution is recommended. The funds will be placed in a newly created bank account, and a new fund will be created to account for the reimbursements. These are funds coming straight from Clay County, and Clay County will also be running a transparency kind of a portal for it, and so there'll be plenty of oversight on management of these funds. And if you'd like me to read the resolution by title, I'll be happy to.
Any questions or discussion from the board first?
Jim, on this money, you say you want to share it with the fire department. Since they're a separate taxing entity than us, can we do that?
Yes, we could even share it with the school district. It's sort of our responsibility. The county has selected the municipal governments to do that. The fire district is a municipal government and is eligible for these funds. I think any public local government entity could actually make claim to them. even our library, you know. I don't know how it's all going to work because we're still working with the county on it, but there is a strong desire by the Clay County municipalities that we do implement a uniform policy. And we are meeting with the cities on a regular basis, meeting with the county staff on a regular basis to make sure there is some uniformity in how these funds are shared out and used.
Are there any other questions or discussion from the board?
I just wanted to share one thing, Mayor. This is Murray Steiner. Is that I had asked Jim regarding the funds. I thought we had until December 30th, 2020 to return any unused funds. And Jim clarified for me is that we have to return it by October so that unspent money could be distributed, I'm assuming, Jim, to other counties or cities that may not have been given as much or need more than they were given.
Clay County wants to see the money stay in Clay County. And I think that they want to, have a last chance effort to allocate it to those in need in Clay County. And of course, our desire will be to see that money is spent in the Kearney community.
Right.
And we'll work hard to do that too.
Great. That's all I had, Mayor.
All right, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments from the board, Mr. Administrator, if you could read by title only.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute documents related to disbursements of coronavirus relief fund allocations from Clay County, Missouri.
So moved.
Second it.
Take roll, please.
Alderman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Holt.
Aye.
Alderman Barger.
Aye.
And Alderman did I say Alderman Barger?
Yes.
Did.
Did I miss somebody?
You did. Murray Steiner.
Alderman Steiner, I passed you up. Somebody's TV was going off in the background. And I was distorted and I was losing it.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
All right, does that just require one reading?
It does.
Okay. If we can move to the next item of new business, please.
Mr. Mayor, the next item of business is an ordinance that would that you've had us draft that would limit board pay to 2 meetings per month. There have been some hesitations by you, and I think even before when Mayor Holt was operating, also recognized the expense of holding a special meeting, and this would limit the amount of pay to 2 meetings per month. A meeting now will cost $1,300. And I can display the ordinance, I think.
Yeah, so my goal here was obviously with the pay increase to the elected officials put into place by previous boards. I was looking for a way to cap our pay. And so currently how our ordinance reads is our pay is per meeting. So limiting pay to 2 meetings per month, which we have a minimum of 2 meetings a month, would limit obviously what the taxpayers pay us to serve them. So that was my intention here, and would appreciate consideration. With that being said, any questions or discussion from the board?
Mayor Murray Steiner, I do have a question. So
Okay.
that we would continue our executive sessions with our meetings. Is that correct?
I can't guarantee that we would never not have more than 2 meetings per month. obviously, if there's an urgent matter that we would need to have, a meeting, I would hope as elected officials, we would come together, whether we're getting paid for that meeting or not, and attend that meeting. So I think to answer your question, Alderwoman Steiner, we would obviously have our first and third week regular meetings as we have them, and then obviously as the need would arise, any special meetings as we do now.
I was just saying that the executive session after the regular meeting has worked so well. That's why I'm hoping that it wouldn't change. That to me has been worked very well. I don't know how the other board members feel, if that's something that you feel is well worked out as far as planning. And when you say urgent issue, I don't think there'd be a problem if we needed to gather together because it was an urgent issue. But I think the executive sessions following the regular meeting has worked out very well.
Yeah, I think they have as well. How our ordinance states right now, if there was a need for an urgent matter and we would, as a group, if we have a quorum, that would require by ordinance for us to receive payment. And that's what I'm trying to eliminate. I'm trying to eliminate the taxpayers paying us for more than 2 meetings a month. Any other questions or discussions from the board?
Well, the way I understood it was that we were limited to 2 meetings, period. So what you're saying is we're not limited to 2 meetings. We're just limited to getting paid for 2 meetings. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's not stating that we can only have 2 meetings a month. It's stating that we will, if we have 8 meetings next month, or 8 meetings a year from now, we're going to only get paid for 2 meetings.
Okay. Because I misread that, because the way I understood it was we only had 2, and there's times when, hey, emergencies happen, and sometimes you have to have more meetings.
Absolutely. All right, if there's no other questions or discussion from the board, Mr. Administrator, could you read by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's an ordinance capping the salaries for the mayor and board of aldermen, city of Kearney, Missouri.
Board, do we entertain a motion?
So moved.
All right, we have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a first and second. If we could take roll, please.
Alderman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Holt,
Nay.
Alderman Steiner,
Nay.
Alderman Barger.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, it's a 2-2 vote.
All right, being a 2-2 vote, that would require me as mayor to vote my tie breaking vote. And I would vote aye to pass and cap the salaries of elected officials to 2 meetings a month.
Shall I read on the second title, read the bill by the second reading?
Yeah, read by second title only, please.
An ordinance capping the salaries for the mayor and board of aldermen for the city of Kearney, Missouri.
Board, if we could entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, Jim, if we could take roll again, please.
Alderman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Holt,
Nay.
Alderman Steiner,
Nay.
Alderman Barger.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the vote is 2-2 and would require a tie-breaking vote by you.
I would vote aye to pass the ordinance to cap and limit the salaries of elected officials.
Mr. Mayor, the vote is 3-2 in favor of the ordinance, and it now becomes an ordinance. Of the bill now becomes an ordinance. Thank you.
All right. That concludes new business. We do have a executive session noticed up to discuss legal matters per RSMO 610.021. So we can consider a motion to adjourn a regular session and go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn and go into executive session.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. We don't want to adjourn our meeting. We simply want to recess from it, and we'll return. So I think the appropriate wording would be to recess from the meeting rather than adjourn.
Then I make a motion to recess.
I second it.
Let's take roll.
Alderman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Holt.
Aye.
Alderman Steiner.
Aye.
Alderman Barger.
Aye.
And we shall select the red button that says leave this meeting, but we shall not close out this meeting. So folks that are in attendance, we will return. So for a while, we will be gone. And we will leave, and I'll contact the city attorney right now, and everybody select their new session for executive session. You were excellent, Marie.
Well, thank you.
You were fast. All you guys are fast. We still have people waiting for us too. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Jim, are you going to resume secretary duties on behalf of Shirley? I assume?
If I don't
I can
see
barely
Shirley-
hear you, Randy.
Can you guys hear me?
There you go.
There you go.
Yes, I will resume secretary.
Okay. Great. Next on our agenda is Alderman discussion. Alderwoman Spencer.
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Alderman Holt.
Yes, I'd like to clarify why I voted no on that. And it's not that I don't trust you, Randy. It's just that if we change that, that's going to be in place for all mayors going forward. And there could be a mayor who would take advantage of the fact that he can call as many meetings as he wants and take up a lot of time. If there is a fee to it, he may be reluctant to call extra meetings that's not necessary. And that was my reasoning for that.
Valid point. Valid point.
I appreciate your explanation of your vote. Although I believe I could call meetings now, but thank you for that. Alderwoman Steiner.
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Okay. And Alderwoman Barger.
Nothing for me.
Great. Well, it's been a long night. I appreciate staff and the board hanging in there and giving our public opportunity to speak. And appreciate everybody. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second it.
Take roll, please.
Alderman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Holt,
Aye.
Alderman Steiner,
Aye.
Alderman Barger.
Aye.
Votes unanimous, Mr. Mayor. We have adjourned.
All righty. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Aye.
Evening.
Jim, I'm heading your direction.
Okay, I'll have the light on for you. Back door.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ryan. Excellent job.
I tried.
Very good. And thank you, Lisa.